VikesNow, I am Dustin Baker. This is the August 9th edition, a Tuesday, 5 days away from the preseason. I know you're getting excited for that because if you watch a show like this, you inevitably watch most of the preseason games to figure out who's going to make the roster. I'm right there with you. Raiders-Vikings Sunday, the final game of Week 1 preseason docket. So today's show, we're going to talk about the team's Achilles heel as defined and described by ESPN.com. Bill Barnwell had a bittersweet take on the Vikings and all of the Super Bowl contending teams. And why was it bittersweet? Well, of the 14 teams that Barnwell listed, bada bing, the Vikings are in the mix for the Super Bowl, at least contendership from a preseason bird's eye view. That's news, isn't it? It seems that up until now, most experts, pundits kind of nibble at mediocrity for the Vikings. Even though they have a new general manager and head coach, I think most power ranking entities look at the roster and say, oh, yep, there's Kirk Cousins. These guys are going 8-9 or 9-8. I think that's how the world feels. Now, probably not how you feel, but the Super Bowl contender mentioned by Barnwell in itself is noteworthy because this is one of the first big times that in the preseason the Vikings get a little respect. But in that same article, he defined the Super Bowl contenders and mentioned Achilles heels. And before I even clicked on the article to figure out what it was going to be, I knew what it was. And of course, unsurprisingly, it is the team's offensive line. Something you've been complaining about since 2014, arguably around then. But yeah, so we knew this. Yeah, that's fine. Offensive line has not shown in the past 8 years that it is anywhere near a contending outfit. But nevertheless, the roster, aside from that, evidently is as defined by ESPN's rankings. So I think the first thing I want to mention is the divide between ESPN's Football Power Index and the entities that rank teams, just subjectively for power rankings. I think back in June, ESPN unveiled its FPI, Football Power Index, or Predictive Index, one of the two rankings, and the Vikings were number 13th. So that explains why they were included in this 14 Super Bowl contenders. It's quite a change of pace from various power ranking entities since the NFL draft. I think NFL.com called Minnesota the 22nd best team, and then down the line from CBS Sports to Yahoo to USA Today, the Vikings are usually about 20th or 21st. Not good, arguably worse than last year if those come true. But the same speech that you'll grow accustomed to from me about power rankings is that all they do is act as a thermometer of public opinion. They do not matter for on-the-field relations. So if the Vikings are ranked 22nd by NFL.com, well, great. It could shoot up to number 10 within 2 weeks. So that's my little speech on power rankings. Even though I authored them myself, they are interesting. But this early divide of the numbers, the FPI versus some dude's opinion, show on paper the Vikings roster is a lot better than 22nd in the NFL. And that was exemplified in the ESPN rankings. So, offensive line, the Achilles heel defined by ESPN. We get it. We started this complaint a lot long before Bill Barnwell got to it. So this is completely familiar territory. The Vikings pass protection in particular, since at least 2015, probably 2014 too, has not been very good. And if you want to be a true blue Super Bowl contender, it can't be that way. So it's shitty that the team would make a Super Bowl contender list, but then have the offensive line because it's so self-fulfilling as terms of a prophecy, and we get it. We already know it. But some of the good aspects about how this doesn't have to be the Achilles heel anymore, and I think I did an episode on this back in the spring, was that the tackles are set already. On the right side with Brian O'Neill, who's shown in 4 seasons, documented that he is adept right tackle, and he's paid handsomely now. And then on the left side is Christian Darrisaw. So normally when you have a team with a shitty offensive line, those are the places where you start finger pointing out of the gate. All right, let's look at the edges of the line. Are they letting defenders get to the quarterback? But for the most part, Minnesota doesn't have that problem. So they've got the tricky part out of the way. Somehow drafted well, Rick Spielman, thank you, for O'Neal and Darrisaw, but it's the guts that causes heartburn. Thankfully, Ezra Cleveland is trending in the right direction from year 1 to year 2. Year 3, we shall see. And, of course, it's right in the middle, the center and the right guard, that makes us do shows like this. So the takeaway on that tackle thing is the hard part is in the rear view. You should have to improve a suspect offensive line by getting the edges straight first. No, that's not the case here. We're trying to go backward and get the innards figured out. And there was even steam the last week from the Vikings coaching staff comparing Darrisaw to Trent Williams. I looked around and said, you need about 5-6 more years of stardom to do that. But that's where we're at right now for the hype machine on Darrisaw, and it's a lot better than being in a spot where, coaches are going, ugh, he's got a lot to learn. We might have to start Jesse Davis over there or look at Oli Udoh at tackle. I think Darrisaw is in a good spot to take another leap in year 2, and that's what everybody's saying as well. And that is a good mention out of training camp to have, especially, or I guess even in the time when, the hype machine is at its paramount. But this Achilles heel thing doesn't have to be this way, because I believe half-assed solutions are done. And when I say half-assed solutions, I mean signing or promoting a reservist veteran guard to fix a problem that either the NFL draft or free agency should solve. Vikings didn't used to do that. It was Dakota Dozier, it was Drew Samia, it was Oli Udoh being converted to an unnatural position, and then when those dudes got hurt, or had COVID, or flat out weren't good, then you find some guy like Mason Cole to double as a guard when he should be a center. I think that the half-measured solutions are done. Why do I think that? Well, because they signed Jesse Davis from the Miami Dolphins, Chris Reed from the Indianapolis Colts, and Ed Ingram from the NFL Draft. And by God, out of those 3 guys, somebody or 2 of them have to emerge at center and right guard. Now, the center one is caveated because the team still enjoys Garrett Bradbury or thinks that they can grant him potential that hasn't been unlocked yet, and we shall see on that. I have my doubts. I'm sure you do as well. But if somehow Bradbury figured out, then you got 3 guys vying for one position, and that's right guard, the one that has caused you nightmares for 2 years in a row. 2019 wasn't half bad with Josh Klein there. But I think that the math and the caliber of player that's been onboarded by Kwesi Adofo-Mensah makes it so this Achilles heel can heal sooner than you're accustomed to. Point blank, blunt force 3 guys that aren't career backups from the Jets like Dakota Dozier, they should, in theory, be able to fix one spot. There's strength in numbers there. And then there's also the sentiment that the tide has to turn at some point. You just can't habitually be bad at one thing, especially when a new coaching staff comes aboard. They have to recognize this. Now, it felt like, how many years, count them with me, with Zimmer in charge and the QBX in charge, that they didn't get it. They flattened. It was only you, me, and we're the only ones that understood that you should employ good pass protection for your pocket passer that you're paying $30 to $40 million per year. Nobody else understood that. Or if they did, they just didn't care because of the offensive line woes that have beset the organization since Cousins came aboard. So I think there's this inevitability that it has to get better at some point, because otherwise that would mean that 2 separate coaching staffs flat out don't believe that pass protection matters. It would probably be the Vikings' luck to employ both of those staffs back to back, but there has to be a man or a woman somewhere in the state of Minnesota in power with the Vikings that's like, this is how we're going to turn this bunch around. We're going to man the trenches with good pass protectors and fix the son of a gun. Because otherwise, we're trapped in a total twilight zone where every year you convince yourself, week one, all right, offensive line is going to be better. Maybe Oli Udoh is a good guard. Maybe this Dozier guy was untapped for so long. And then within 3 weeks, you're like, this is the same shit that I've seen for 8 straight years. It's a chain from my usual eye rolls on the offensive line. I think that the twilight zone can end merely because new people are in charge. I'll put it that way. And the most exciting aspect of this is that, with this 3-pronged solution from Jesse Davis, Chris Reed, Ed Ingram, I don't know if Austin Schlottman will evolve into anything, is that we don't know what Kirk Cousins can do with normal or good pass protection. What we get is the guy who doesn't have a very good pocket presence as is. That's one of his weak spots of his game, especially when he got here in 2018, he'd do the turtle thing. In the pocket collapse, he'd just get in his shell and go like this because he didn't want to fumble, which is great. We don't want the fumbles. But if you're going to pay a dude $35 million, he should be able to improvise. Now, his improv has improved since joining the Vikings. 2018 was rough. But the improv should be lessened if you can fortify the trenches. So with I think PFF ranked the offensive line per pass protection last year as 27th, which would be 6th worst in the league. Still, in no garbage time, mind you, Cousins delivered 33 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. So if they can nudge this pass protection to 16th in the league, or God forbid, 12th best in the league, who knows what the ceiling is for Cousins. In Washington, he had a good offensive line. You can't knock that. But he was also not as good as he is now. He's matured and developed into a better passer. To round out the show, I hope that I have explained why the Achilles heel can feel a little bit better with new brains in the room, new players, different offensive scheming. I'll list the contenders that accompanied the Vikings in this ESPN piece if you haven't read it yet. Those are the Arizona Cardinals, the Baltimore Ravens, the Buffalo Bills. Somehow the Cleveland Browns still wiggled in there. Dallas Cowboys, Denver Broncos, now that Danger Russ works there. The Green Bay Packers, because of course they are. Indianapolis Colts, somehow. Got a tip of the cap. Kansas City Chiefs. Los Angeles Chargers, who are sneaky good on paper. The incumbent champions, Los Angeles Rams. Your Minnesota Vikings. Philadelphia Eagles. I don't get it. And then Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because so long as Brady's on a football team, eternally they will be Super Bowl contenders. So that is my speech about the Achilles heel. Of course, it is true. It is real. It's been this way for 8 damn years. But if you believe just in change in general, I think that this can come to an end. I don't know if it'll be week 1, but if indeed you and me, are doing shows about how this offensive line sucks in November, it will have meant that how many coaches, like in the 20s or the 30s, from coordinators on down, just don't get it. We're the only people in the world that have come to the conclusion that pass protection matters. All right, we'll be back on Wednesday, I believe, with Josh Fry and Skol, baby.